On the record, 9:33 a.m.
All right, so Ms. Tassin, I've given you a document that has the identifying title of income expense affidavit of Nina Tassin, April 2020 to February of 2021 at the top. And you've now had a chance to review the 2 pages of its content. Can you tell me your appreciation of what this affidavit represents?
I don't know what you're asking me.
What is this document?
I don't know. It was something I was asked to fill out, estimating, giving my best recollection of my expenses during the stated period of time, April 2020 to February 2021.
Okay. Do you recall who it is that asked you to prepare that information?
Am I allowed to answer this question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I believe that Ryan, who works in this office, gave it to me.
Young associate here. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I believe that's who I spoke to about it and who sent it to me.
Excellent. Can you tell me the process that you went through in the compilation of the numbers that are included in the affidavit?
Some things were easy, like rent was a known amount. You know, I just knew how much I paid every month in rent, and was able to like look at my checkbook and see. I mean, rent I just had from memory. Other things I looked at statements or estimated, you know, what I had paid.
Okay. When you say you looked at what, I don't assume things when I'm asking questions like this, and so I want to make sure that I'm clear about what you're referencing. Were you looking at financial records that you maintained?
I did not go line by line and add up every grocery bill and every gasoline bill. No, I did not do that.
Okay.
So I did look at things if I was unsure, like insurance. I think I looked at my statement for that.
Okay.
I don't know what you're asking me besides that. Did I ever look at stuff? I knew how much I would pay the guy to come by and cut the grass. You know, stuff like that.
Right.
So I didn't always look at statements, but I tried to do my best to estimate what I believed the expenses to be.
So there are a lot of ways that these forms get filled out. After 30 years, I'm familiar just about every process people will go through. Some people are very meticulous. They will go through a number of statements, whether it's their credit card statement, their checking statements, whatever it may be. Some of them even have receipts, and they'll compile all the numbers and average them out over a monthly period. And so we get very concise numbers, usually with decimals. Some people will rely exclusively on a process that I describe as guesstimating, where they have an inclination of what they think they spend, and they record that number, and then they add those up, and that's the total that they get. And so somewhere in between the incredibly scientific way of doing it, where you take all the actual expenses that were incurred during a period of time and average them, and the guesstimating process, which is on the other end of the extreme, there is whatever process you use. So am I to understand that some of these values were the actual values that you verified from a financial record, and that some of them were either a guesstimate or your best estimate of what the expense was?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I ask him a question?
You may certainly ask him a question.
You got to record
I'm
it. So
anxious about whether I can ask this question, whether I can say something.
But then don't say anything. He hadn't asked you a question. Wait till Scott asks you a question.
Right.
And then I'll object if it's not an appropriate question. So then just don't answer if he doesn't ask you a question.
Okay.
Right. So the rent, you said that you remember that you had a rental amount of $18.25 a month. That was for an apartment or a condominium of some type that you had in Oregon?
It was for a small house in Oregon.
Okay. And how long did you maintain that residence?
Oh gosh, from, I believe it was February of 2020. Yes, February of 2020 until I bought the house in April of, was that 2022? And
Spring of 2022
yeah,
is.
I believe it was April, and then Ian actually stayed in his bedroom. He stayed in the house and got roommates for a little while, so I was actually still paying for some of it after that as well. So past, well, certainly past the time of this piece of paper that I'm looking at.
Okay. And so the rental unit, when you say you paid for part of it after you bought your house and moved in, and Ian stayed in the house and then brought in some roommates, when you say you were continuing to pay on that house, was it the pro rata share of rent for Ian?
Yes.
All right, you have a $60 a month lawn care expense. Mm-hmm. Was that something that you verified, or is that an estimate of what you think you were paying in lawn care?
I treated it as, how can I explain this? You don't have to cut the grass every week in Oregon like you do here, but when you have to cut it, you have to cut it a lot. You know, it's like it grows like crazy and then it kind of doesn't grow. So I took what I knew I was paying people, say in the summer, spring and summer, and then divided that over the time period. Does that make sense?
Yes. So when you say you took...
I did that with some of these other things as well.
Okay. So when you say you took the expense, where was it that you went to look for the actual amounts that you paid people that you then incorporated into the averaging process?
Sometimes I paid the kid across the street cash, and sometimes I wrote checks. I had different people cut the grass, so I couldn't tell you exactly.
Okay. Did you ever have your son cut the grass?
He hates to cut grass, so.
I have two grown boys, 18 and 21. One hates cutting grass, one absolutely loves it.
Yeah.
So there's...
He would go out with a machete and cut the grass, which usually made the grass look worse than...
Probably so.
And also alarmed the neighbors, so I typically did not ask him to cut the grass.
All right. The homeowner's insurance, did you actually have homeowner's insurance on a rental property?
It was not, I used that blank because that was, I remember asking Ryan about that. It was like a renter's policy and stuff like that. So it was not a homeowner's policy because I didn't own the home.
Was that a separate policy that you purchased or part of your insurance package for all of your needs? Some people bundle up their...
Let me see if I bundled it. I mean, I looked up, yeah, the $15 would tell me that was not including the cars. So yeah, the insurance for the cars is separate.
Okay. The food expense of $600, is that an estimate of
Yes.
what you were spending? Right. You had an automobile note of $423. For which automobile was that note?
I'd have to check. I believe that, let's see. I believe that at least initially was the Kia van, but then I did get a different car.
Okay, so We're talking about the time frame of a period 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that period of time, you had 2 different vehicles you operated?
I'm trying to remember the exact dates. I would have to reference some other documents to know the exact dates. I had the Kia van when I arrived, and I kept that until the lease was nearly up, and that amount is the amount that I paid for that van. And then I sold that, and I went to a local place and like rented a car because I didn't have funds for a car, and then I did buy a car from a used car place, and it was terrible, and then they took it back, and then I had a different car. So like there was a lot of moving parts, and if you want me to give you a very solid answer, I will have to research that.
Let me go back and see what we can reconstruct as we sit here now. So when you left Louisiana, you had a Kia van.
Yes.
What year was that Kia van?
I don't know. It might have been 2016 or 20. It might have been a 2015 that I acquired in 2016, because I remember it was like, you know, kind of a deal on the lease because they had a bunch of them.
All right. And you leased the van, you didn't purchase it.
Yes.
How long was the lease?
I don't know. We had that document yesterday. Was it 3 or 4 years? I can't answer the question.
He's not being
I'm sorry.
disrespectful. He just can't answer questions
sorry.
I've posed to you.
I'm sorry, I don't know. I
it's-
have that document and I can get it for you.
Usually, I think auto leases run about 3 years on average.
3 or 4
typically,
years.
is it a 3-year lease?
I'm pretty sure it ended in 2020, so if it started in 2016, it would have been a 4-year lease.
4-year? Okay. All right, so it was a 3 or 4-year lease. At some point, it expired in 2020. When the lease was up, you said a moment ago that you sold it, but you wouldn't sell a vehicle that was leased.
So I did research. I was extremely conscious of money, and I evaluated all of my options, and the lease, how can I say this? I had several choices. I could buy the van and keep it. I could hand it back and have some payments. There were sort of options at the end of the lease, right? And I evaluated the financial outcome of each of those options, and I did the thing where I was going to lose the least amount of money. So I purchased the van, and then I sold it through this little used car dealer that I had met and was helpful. He was basically doing it on kind of like consignment. I didn't have to pay him a lot to sell it.
All right. And the net result for you was a gain or a loss on the vehicle?
It was a loss, but I do not recall exactly. It was not. I am going to estimate that it was less than $2,000. Meaning like between what I paid out and then what I got back and had to pay him to clean it and all that stuff. It was a net loss of $1,000 or $2,000, and I don't remember.
And then you purchased a vehicle after you sold the Kia van?
I'm really trying to remember the timing of this. There was a lot happening at this time, okay? The least of my concerns was this van, but I remember having a car that I purchased from the same person, The name of the place is Rave Auto. It's a guy named Gabe. And it was a little Subaru, and it was not reliable. It was too well used. Actually, frankly, I think it was just a bit of a lemon, because Subarus are normally great for a long time, and this one, so I thought I was buying something that was reliable, and it was not, and he took it back. But I used it for a couple of months, and then I got a different car.
All right.
And for some of these periods of time, I didn't have the funds, and I rented a car from him. He allowed me to rent a car off the lot. So for like so much a month. And I would have to look up these records to tell you exactly what it was.
Well, my question would be this: when you were compiling the numbers and coming up with an amount of $423 a month, what expense was that based on? Was it based on the Kia lease?
The Kia was really close to that amount. It might have been 422 or 423. And the other things were, I don't know. I might have just used that amount because that was one that was consistent. I'd have to look up what I paid Gabe in terms of the other ones. I certainly don't think it was less than that to rent the cars from him when I was renting. I believe it was probably a little bit more than that. He was giving me a deal, but that would be a really crazy deal.
Okay. So at the top of the affidavit, there is a introductory paragraph. It says, "Before me, the undersigned notary public, duly commissioned and qualified in this state and county, personally appeared Nina Tassin, who after being duly sworn declared that the following figures and amounts are accurate to the best of her knowledge." And if you flip over to the second page, there is a notary's signature and stamp. Is that your name as the affiant?
Yes.
Okay. And you took this to a notary in the state of Oregon and had them notarize the document before sending it to your lawyers in Louisiana, correct?
Yes.
All right. And so the $423 figure is based on a car that you got rid of during that period of time. Is there in any way a reflection of the other rentals or the car that you purchased and then returned to Gabe? Are any of those amounts incorporated in the $423 amount in some way?
It was my best estimate.
Okay. The automobile maintenance and repairs, and then you have AAA and wash. Can you explain what that is?
That was on the form when I got it. The AAA and wash, I did not add that.
Okay.
So it was written there, and I just filled in the form I got. So I don't know if it was a relic from someone else.
Oh, and that's fine. So
And same with HOA, I didn't add that.
How did you arrive at the $50 amount in line 11?
I made an estimate based on, having to get oil changes, and I mean, sure, I washed the car sometimes, vacuumed it out, stuff like that. So I just looked at what I thought would have been a reasonable estimate of oil changes, tire, basic car maintenance over the course of a year, and divided by 12.
And that estimate is based on what kind of documents? Did you use your own financial documents, or sometimes people do Google searches, hey Google, what's the average cost of maintaining a Subaru?
I don't remember. I would have done one of those. I don't know if I looked at like how much was my oil change and how often. I don't remember. I did one of those.
The fuel cost, how was it that you arrived at that figure?
Again, I was looking at over the course of a long period of time. And so on several of these things, I would use like a monthly, I would put, what is the fuel cost? $240 a month. Most months I was not using $240, but there were several very long trips, including a road trip for the kids to drive across the country to see their dad. And I'm trying to remember if there was another one in that time period. But anyway, so I kind of would look at the whole time period and say, well, this is about what we spent during that time and divide by 12.
When you say I look at the whole time period, what time period are you referencing?
I looked at this time period. I'm sorry.
When you point at things, I know what you're doing.
Okay,
but
I understand now. I'm sorry.
The folks that are recording this will not necessarily.
I looked at the April 2020 to February 2021 time period and tried to give my best estimate for the entire period and divide by 12, divide by the number of months that were there. That was the way I approached this paper.
So the automobile, and I'm asking these questions because when people give us nice whole round numbers and there's no decimal spots,
yeah,
it's typically an estimate, and I just want to verify.
It is
I
an
have an
estimate.
assumption, but we don't assume things because we know what the adage is that comes out of that. So I'm trying to verify these, and you can just say it's an estimate, and then we'll go on to the next. The automobile insurance, is that based on an actual policy, or is that an estimate of what you think your expense was?
I believe it's based on the policy, but I would have to verify that. Because things that were easy, again, this was a while ago, things that were easy for me to look up and say, oh, like the rent or whatever, I typically did try to go look up.
So there's a number of different vehicles that you were operating during the period of time from April 2020 to February 2021. You had a lease, which would require you to have automobile insurance. You had a purchased vehicle, which would also require that. The times that Gabe was letting you rent cars off of his small sales lot, what was the arrangement there? Were you also required to keep insurance on those vehicles?
I don't know if it was a requirement by him. I don't remember, but I did keep insurance just for my own, protection,
Okay.
and that of my family.
And at the point in time, without me doing the math, how old was Ian during that period of time? Would he have reached the age of 18 yet?
Yes.
Okay, was he driving?
Yes.
Did you also incorporate costs for the fuel that he was using or insurance costs for him in these numbers that the affidavit has?
I don't remember. Probably, but I don't remember.
So I'm asking the question because there's two columns in section 2, which are living expenses. One is a spouse and a parent, and all of your expenses show up in that first column. The second column is expenses for the child or children, and there's no
Yeah, I didn't
portion of that.
differentiate. Yeah, I probably just put it all in my pile, my column.
The clothing expense, $100 a month. Is it your assertion that during this time period you were spending $100 a month on clothes?
For all of us, we would go to thrift stores and buy clothes.
So your assessment now, looking back at this, is the $100 reflected expenses for clothing for you, for Isabel, and for Ian?
Yes.
All right.
And again, that one I can tell you, I was just trying to give a reasonable estimate. I did not add that number up.
All right. The dental expense of $90 a month. can you tell me how you arrived at that figure?
Again, I would have to go back and check other records, and my memory of exactly what happened when is not, clear on this. I had some dental work done, so I'm not sure if that was my crown or Ian's wisdom teeth, or there were several things that happened, and I don't know which expenses those were. But there's records somewhere if you need me to find out.
No, I'm accepting the sworn affidavit. I'm just trying to understand what the process was that you used to get to that. The household expenses of $75 a month, what does that expense indicate to you or reflect for you?
I'm sorry, I need to look at that.
Line 18.
Oh, line 18, okay. If I'm remembering my thoughts, I don't want to say, let's see.
Bag, snacks.
Yeah, if I'm remembering my thoughts, I kind of lumped a lot of things in there, including like laundry is a separate item here, but I was thinking laundry detergent, stuff you go to, here you go to Walmart, there you go to Bi-Mart, right? Or somewhere like that, you go get things like that. We also would buy furnishings. We had inadequate furnishings, and so we would go buy mats or beds or linens, things like that. So I kind of created I looked at it as what did we spend over this time period and tried to make a reasonable estimate.
Okay. The personal grooming of $30 a month, what does that expense reflect?
Again, that would have been an estimate for things like shampoo, shaving cream, razors, occasional haircuts for everybody, stuff like that.
All right, the electric bill that you have reflected in line 21.
I believe I added that one up. Actually, kind of added up the whole time period and divided by the number of months and rounded to a whole number.
The water, garbage, and recycling expense,
I believe I did the same there and on the cable. And on the cell phone.
and the cell phone bill that you've got of $165, how many devices does that represent?
2.
And which phones would those be, or devices?
Mine and Ian.
All right, you have educational expenses listed in line 26, $40 a month. Whose educational expenses are those?
It's way lower than it would be for college, so I don't honestly know. I might have just been conservative in my estimate. It might have, I don't know.
All right, you have a life insurance policy listed in line 27.
Mm-hmm.
What policy is that?
I don't think I have it any longer. It was a shelter life insurance policy.
It's a term policy?
I don't know. I had a separate life
Yeah,
insurance.
if you buy it a year chunk at a time, it's a term policy generally. If you have a long-term policy, sometimes they'll sell you things like whole life, where you build an annuity that eventually pays your policy.
It was a month-to-month type of situation. I
Okay.
don't know.
Pet care of $120 a month. For how many animals?
One
Well, what kind of animal is that?
dog, large German Shepherd mix. My daughter's dog. Now, it's a family dog.
All right. The $50 a month in entertainment expenses, do you know what that is?
I assume I would have included like Netflix and Spotify and maybe an occasional movie or something. Again, that would have been an estimate.
Right. Pet care would have been an estimate as well.
The she's the most expensive dog ever. She's had multiple surgeries, as well as just her food alone is expensive. So that was a conservative estimate.
Right. And the vacations that you have listed there, $200 a month. How often were you taking vacations?
There was a cross-country road trip when the kids went to see August. There were some flights home to handle things. I included, I don't know, I'd have to go check my records to see what was included in there. But there was a lot of back and forth for a while, and especially during this time period.
From your description,
So I put it as vacation. It was more like travel. It was not exactly like trips to, Cancun or something. It was travel that was needed for some reason.
all right, so any type of extended travel to Louisiana or other places that would be included in that figure. When did you start sharing expenses with, it's Corey as your partner? When did you and Corey start sharing expenses?
When we moved in together,
All right. And you moved in, I'm not asking the personal questions about your
it was
relationship.
around
but it was
this when we
same
bought
time
the
when
house.
you bought the
Yes,
house.
yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Are you the beneficiary of any type of a trust?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
It,
So-
I inherited some money, and I'm not really sure if it's set up in a trust or not. I don't think it is.
Okay. So, your mother and father are both deceased now,
Yes.
and that's in the last several years. The estate that they had, do you know if it was separate successions that were open for them or a joint succession?
I think it was joint, but I don't know.
Okay.
We had one attorney and that handled everything.
All right.
And my brother is the executor, and I don't really know.
And what is your brother's name?
Christopher Skinner.
Skinner?
Yes.
All right. Do you know in what parish the succession or successions were opened?
I would assume Orleans.
Okay. That would have been the parish where your parents resided at the time of their death?
Yes.
Okay.
The attorney is in Metairie, so I'm not sure if I don't know if they open it, I would assume they would open it in Orleans where they resided,
I believe that would be correct.
but I don't know.
Do you know the attorney's name that has handled the succession?
Let me try to remember. We had a nickname for him. Andrew. He's on Metairie Road-ish, like around Metairie Road. And it might be Buchler.
Okay.
Buchler? I'm gonna guess. That's a guess. I can find out. Would you like me to look? I have this
No,
card.
that's fine. So when the succession was opened, it's just you and your brother who have inherited from your mother and father, yes?
Yes.
All right. Do you know if there was a will that either one of them had?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
We did wills and that sort of thing at some point together, so I believe that was what stood at their passing.
So your brother was the executor of the estate.
Mm-hmm.
Have you relied on him to handle the administration of all things related to the succession?
Yes.
Right. Have you been involved to any extent in preparing documents, meeting with the attorney, doing any of the stuff needed to finalize the succession?
I had to go to the attorney's office, I believe it was once. It may have been twice. And sign some things early on, but I have not been involved in any of the handling of the estate other than I assume it was like to open the estate or open the succession or something like that.
Your appreciation of the succession that was filed, and first of all, let me ask this, do you know, has it been completed? Has there been a judgment of possession that lays out who is to receive what from your parents' estate?
I do not know in any legal, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what the legal documents or what the status of any of that is.
So typically, and I'm not giving legal advice, you certainly have an excellent attorney who can do that, but just to kind of simplify the process so that you understand my question. So when you were getting a divorce from August Tassin, you filed a petition for divorce. The end of that was a judgment of divorce, which terminated the marriage. When you open a succession, in simple terms, you file a petition at the beginning for the administration of the estate, and at the end there's a judgment of possession, like you get a judgment of divorce if you're getting divorced. And that says who's going to get what, lays it all out in a judgment form. Have you seen a document that lays out how you and your brother are receiving property from the estate of your mother and father?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Do you have any independent knowledge of what was in the estate and how it is being allocated between you and your brother?
Again, I'm going to go ahead and make an objection just for record. The successions were done after both or the community and I believe after the timing.
I'm not sure when it was, so I'm going to get to that. But to the extent that you wish to make an objection to the form of the question, you're welcome to do that.
Right. Yeah. So I'm object to it to the extent that that they were done after the interim spouse support, child support, and the termination of the community. I do not believe it's relevant. Subject to that, I don't know the exact timing, and I know you hadn't asked a question, but subject to that, if she wants to answer, that's fine. But I want to make that objection before it's.
I mean, I don't mind answering. I don't.
Well,
Sorry.
we're reserving all of our objections today except the form of the question, and so I appreciate the relevance objection. I'm going to ask you to answer to the best of your knowledge.
Could you please? I've lost track
Sure.
of what the question is.
Do you have any independent knowledge of what the allocation of assets would have been to you and your brother from your parents' estate?
By allocation, you mean how's it
How much
divided?
money are you getting out of the succession? That would
Okay,
be a
it would
simple way
have
to put
been
it.
50-50.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding of it, and I trust my brother completely, and he has been handling it, and I haven't bothered to do anything else with it, okay, other than just accept his word on it. But it's a 50-50 split, and I could tell you what I knew to be the assets, but I have not seen something breaking down, exact dollar amounts of everything. Or probably I have at some point, but I don't have them in my head, certainly.
What is your understanding of the assets involved?
There was their family home of, many, many years, 50-something years, or I guess about 50 years. And that was located at 4136 Walmsley Avenue.
Walmsley?
Yeah.
Never heard of that.
I think he was a governor or something. Walmsley.
Not growing up in New Orleans, though, there's a lot of places that I can honestly say I wouldn't know of. If you're from there, you typically have a much better knowledge. All right, so they had a family home. Were there any life insurance policies?
There was a life insurance policy on my dad. I believe it was just on my dad.
All right. And were there any other assets other than the house that had to be either sold or
It was sold.
liquidated, done something done to it with the administration of the succession? Anything other than the house?
My grandmother's house at 1016 Marengo, Marengo.
All right. Now, your parents, for a period of time, had moved to the greater Baton Rouge area. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right. When originally was it that they moved to the greater Baton Rouge area from, I'll assume, a lifetime of living in the New Orleans area?
I can tell you the circumstances. I would have to really think about exactly what year it was. Gosh, I don't know the year.
Right. Why don't we start with the circumstances? What was it? What is your recollection of why it is that why they would have moved from the greater New Orleans area and that home they'd lived in to the greater Baton Rouge area?
My dad had several years of decline that was eventually diagnosed as hydrocephalus, and he had surgery. It was a type of neurosurgery, and the home on Walmsley, it's in New Orleans in an area that floods.
Right.
That was built like knowing it would flood, kind of thing. So they had steps, a lot of steps, and he was not able to go home after the surgery. So it was a bit of an emergency in that was not planned. We thought, I was concerned about it, but there was not really a lot of opportunity to plan for it. And so after the surgery, I was scrambling to find a place for them to live that was close enough to me that I could help them. And so I moved them into Southside Gardens, which is on Perkins Road.
All right, and then was there actually a condominium or a house or something like that you all purchased for them to reside in the greater East Baton Rouge area?
They lived in Southside Gardens for a while, and then August and I purchased the condo at Blair Lane. I'm struggling to remember the number, but it was on Blair Lane.
All right, the condo on Blair Lane, where did the financing come from for the purchase of that property?
The down payment was, is this what you're asking? You're asking
Right.
about-
I mean, you go to a closing, you've got to have
Right.
some capital of some kind unless
Right.
there's zero finance or 100% financing.
The
So-
down payment came from my parents. It was $40,000. I don't actually know where it came from for them. My brother handled all of their finances. And we used our credit, and we had a relationship with Citizens Bank, existing a relationship because of our other rental properties that we've already referenced. We had like a home equity line or some kind of loan that we had taken out with them, and that's why we had that account opened to begin with. So we had a relationship with that bank, and we purchased the condo with their financing. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm using the right word, but that bank gave us a loan to our business. By our, I'm referencing August and I's Octavian property business.
Okay. So it was purchased by Octavian Properties LLC
Yes,
using capital and initial investment that was put up by your parents. Your brother handled the administration of that.
yes.
Okay. How were the business decisions for that condominium handled?
I don't know what you're asking.
All right. Was it at the point in time where you guys bought this, how close were you to 2019 when you filed for divorce, or when August filed for divorce?
I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to look up the date.
Okay. Was it what,
Couple of years.
close to COVID? Do you recall
No,
them
it
living in the
was-
condo during COVID? Was it prior to COVID?
No, I mean, well, 2019 was prior to COVID, so it was all prior to COVID.
Okay.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I don't know what you're asking.
Sure. I'm trying to figure out how decisions were made about that condominium. Whether it was who to hire to go paint it, whether it was how it was going to be sold once your parents were no longer with us. Whatever the decisions were about that condo, I'm wondering how those decisions were made. Was it
So I
you
always,
and your brother? Was it you and your brother in August? Was it just you in August?
so I always discussed all of this with August, but it was my parents, we set it up such that the note that was coming out every month of the Citizens account, my parents, meaning my brother, Christopher, would move money in. He would kind of auto pay money into that account, and then it would auto deduct out for the note, to cover the note. And that was a decision that I'm certain that August was aware of and that we discussed. And all the expenses related to the condo, it was already fully renovated when we bought it. It was in really good condition. But, the couple of times, like a little thing would happen, we would have a repairman or something. My parents would pay that. If there were any expenses related to the condo, my parents would pay them.
Do you recall?
And I may or may not have cleared that with August.
Do you recall what year the condominium was sold?
We have those documents. I'd have to look at them. I want to say it was 2020. It may have been 2021.
And how was the decision made to go ahead and sell that condominium?
Um, they were not living in it, and August and I wanted to sell it. August was included in the decision to sell the condo.
Okay.
They paid, my parents, I will clarify, my parents paid the note and all expenses on the condo up until the time it was sold.
Okay.
So despite the fact that they were no longer living there.
And after the property was sold, where were the sale proceeds placed? What happened to the sale proceeds from the condo after it was sold?
There were no sale proceeds. Do you mean like a equity type of thing?
I mean, did you all make any money on the sale of the condominium?
No, we lost money. August and I did not lose money. My parents lost money. They put down a $40,000 down payment. And again, the HUD statement, I know that they were looking at it yesterday. It's available. I believe it was $11,000 they got back at the closing. My parents got back. So they sold it. By the time, you know, everything was paid for, it was a $25,000 or $30,000 loss to my parents.
All right, I want to go back for a moment to the administration of your parents' estate. You said that, I know you trust your brother implicitly and he's handling all of the administration of the estate, and the two of you are splitting the assets. Have all of the assets that were part of the estate been sold and liquidated, meaning the two houses and whatever else they had as far as movable property?
Yes.
Okay. Have the proceeds from all of those things been divided between you?
I have received some of it. I don't know if I've received all of it. I think I've received most of it, but I don't actually know the answer to that question.
When you say, I think I received most of it, are you saying you think that you've received most of what you are to get?
Yes.
That is your 50% of the estate?
Yes.
All right. And what is the total amount of your portion of the estate?
I would have to add that up. I don't know.
Okay. Give me a rough estimate.
I really would struggle to answer that. It's because my brother did a lot of work on one of the properties and he paid for that, and so he was owed money back. So I don't really know.
Okay.
The houses were worth about $1 million together. But again, there were a lot of expenses that had to come out. So they were about $1 million.
All right. In addition to the houses, were there investments that they maintained?
There was an IRA. I think there was an IRA or something like that.
Do you know how much the IRA was?
Are you asking total?
Yeah. Total or your portion, as long as
I would estimate the total was around 200,000.
Right. And do you know what the payout was on the life insurance?
No, it might have been 400, or it might have been 400 or 500.
All right, and I don't know anything about your brother Christopher. Is he older brother or younger brother?
Older?
Okay. He lives in New Orleans still?
No,
Where does Christopher live?
Brookhaven, Mississippi.
I don't mind you looking at your phone, but
I'm not looking at my phone. I'm looking at my hands.
Oh, okay. If I just ask that if you have to refer to anything
No, my phone
for
is
information, you just let me know.
my phone is in my purse.
Great. Some people don't like folks looking at stuff. I don't mind as long as I know they are. So if you feel the need to do that, you certainly can ask for a moment to do it. All right, so he's in Brookhaven. What does Christopher do?
He owns a business that is related to business development.
Is he a consultant?
I think so.
Okay. So you said that he had already given, or had already turned over part of the proceeds from the succession to you. About when was it that that occurred?
I would have to go check the bank statements and things like that, but I got, it was in different pieces. I got some life insurance, and then I think I got an IRA, and then I think trying to remember which house sold first. I can't remember. They were about the same time the houses sold.
Would that have been something that was transferred to you through a bank transfer? Would he have sent you a check?
I believe he sent me checks.
Are you expecting any additional funds from the succession at this time?
No. Maybe a little bit. I know that there is a little bit left. We had a brief discussion about that. Like, about holding some for paying attorneys, and my father needs to be buried, and other things.
Okay. So we had asked for documents regarding the succession, and we got some limited documents from you, but there was nothing that definitively laid out the administration of the estate. Have you been provided with documents from the succession by your brother or the attorney that you all had hired?
I don't have any in my possession. I've probably seen them.
Right. My question was very pointed. Have you received documents from your brother and or your attorney in that case, regarding the administration of the estate? Things kind of like what I was describing earlier, a judgment of possession, or something, maybe a detailed descriptive list, very similar to what you filled out in this case. Have you received any of the legal pleadings like that from the succession?
I don't think so, but I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Let's talk for a minute, if we could, about the Soul Cycle farm that you haven't or had an interest in, have or had, with Jason. Bradford is the last name, right? Mm-hmm. So when did you first become aware of the concept of Soul Cycle? It's Soul Cycle Farms, LLC?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Sorry. I'm tired.
When did you first become familiar with the concept of that farm?
Are you asking when I first had a conversation or when we started it as an actual?
Yes. One day there was no knowledge in your head of anything related to or representing Soul Cycle Farms LLC. And then after that day, you were suddenly aware of the concept. When did you first become aware of the concept of the farm?
So I was asking for clarification because I've had talked about having a farm and a farm business for many, many years. But the actual concept of Soul Cycle Farm and the name and it as an entity was either October or November of 2019. I can't remember. We opened an account and we also filed the LLC papers, and I can't remember which one we did first.
Right. Let me start from another direction then. How long have you and Jason Bradford been acquainted with each other?
Since in the 90s, and I can't remember if it was 94 or 95. I think it was 95.
All right, so you met sometime in the mid-90s. And how was it that you all came to know each other?
I was an applicant to a graduate program that he was a student in, and I was interviewing at his school, and they said at the school assigned him to give me a tour or something like that. And we had similar research interests.
That sounds kind of like how you meet your first husband. You bump into him in a program like that.
Yeah.
Were you all ever like a dating couple, or is this just simply a platonic relationship carried over the years?
He's been friends with us for years.
Okay. And so
I say us because eventually, not long after that, he met August, and his wife, Kristen, met both. Like, we all knew each other.
Everybody got married to somebody, and you were friends together. All right, so this would have been sometime when you were still in New Orleans in school, or was that when you moved on to LSU?
I first met him.
Because the mid-90s would fall slap in the middle of those two.
I was applying to graduate school. So
Okay.
I was applying. It was during my application process. I went to visit multiple schools that I had applied to.
And what makes Jason capable or competent to run a farm?
He, I mean, I don't know how to answer that question. He has a PhD in botany and was working sort of a university type of track, right? Doing research, and I think he was teaching a little bit. And became interested in food security and organic farming through his work at the university, and he eventually even ran a business, or I don't know all of Jason's resume, but he did then run a business or partner with someone on a farmland, like management business. So he ran some pretty large farms, like where he was not doing farming himself, but kind of putting landowners together with growers and sheep herders and stuff like that.
He got out of academia, I'm assuming at some point he started with academia, he got his PhD, was teaching somewhere. Mm-hmm. Is he done with the academic side? Is he purely in the commercial side of farming now?
He does, yes. The answer is mostly yes, to the extent I know. He does some collaborative things with the university in Corvallis,
All right.
Oregon State.
So you've, at some point in time, the two of you talked about setting up Soul Cycle farms, and you're saying the first time that that the concept of it was in your mind was somewhere October, November of 2019.
Would you like more details?
Sure.
I was working on that farm with my daughter, DeArmond. We mentioned that, or I mentioned that. That was the summer of 2019. And I was living at the Bradfords as well. We all were living at the Bradfords. And I'm trying to remember the exact timing of this, but, you know, so did I ever talk to him about the farm or farming? Yes. You know, I loved being on the farm. I loved working on the farm. So there were conversations about farming in that during that summer. But it wasn't until I think it was September. My mom was diagnosed with lung cancer, and I came home to help her with surgery. And also, August and I were talking about separating. And so there was lots of things, big things happening concurrently. So it was probably September, I think, when I started to think, well, I remember talking to August. I had to have a surgery. I needed surgery as well. And I remember talking to August about having the surgery in Louisiana versus having it in Oregon. And he thought I should have it in Oregon for lots of reasons, one of which was the likely separation, and the other which was the quality of the care. And that was in early October. I'm saying all of this just to give you, like, there's background here. And I was living with the Bradfords through this whole time. When I wasn't here caring for my parents or talking to August about what are we going to do and working on the rent house to get it ready to be sold, there were a lot of moving parts. But yes, I was living with the Bradfords. I probably had conversations during that time that were like, well, what am I going to do if Joe and I get separated? You know, what am I going to do? So were there conversations like, maybe I could farm? Possibly. But it was not an entity until October.
So I'm going to ask another question, but then I want to jump back to one of your earlier statements, and I appreciate the answer. So the Soul Cycle Farms LLC, incorporated in Oregon, it's set up under the government of the state of Oregon. Secretary of State is registered there to do business. What does it do? What are all of the business activities it engages in?
I'm no longer involved in it since I started working. I mean, I think on paper I am, and Jason and I very recently had a conversation about remedying that, and we haven't taken any action to that effect.
You talking about selling your interest,
Meaning just, I don't really have there's no money to be traded, but it doesn't have any assets really. I guess there's a truck, but it's not, it's like a 1997 pickup truck or something. But just we've had a brief conversation recently about needing to remedy that situation. But as far as I know, I'm still on all the paperwork. but I'm not actively involved, so I can't answer that question for right now, what's going on, other than that I see Jason socially and hear what he's doing. But I do not know everything that he's doing currently.
So I grew up in the country. We had 30 acres with a 5-acre lake in the back. We had 9 commercial greenhouses that I used to drag hoses through and spray. When I was a little bitty tyke, I went out and helped spray test plots for something called Roundup.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And then we had a commercial nursery, and we ran a commercial landscaping company. And so I went to law school because I sure as hell didn't want any more part of all that stuff. But I understand it intimately.
Okay.
Okay. So
you want to know what we
I
did.
want to know where was the money generated, because I've seen multiple aspects of farming operations, and I understand the difficulty in generating profits. And so
Yes.
what I'm wondering is, when it gets to the nuts and bolts of it, what did Soul Cycle Farms do?
Okay. So I just wanted to clarify, I'm not trying to not be vague. I just wanted to clarify, I no longer really know exactly that answer, but I know what we were doing when I was involved.
That's what I'm asking then.
Okay.
When you were involved, what was it doing to make money?
Well, we did not make any profit to speak of that I know of. It was not a successful endeavor. However, we planted that first, I'm trying to remember what came first. The spring of 2020, the spring of 2020, we were going to just grow hemp, which at the time was, if you're familiar with farming, it was like a serious cash crop. Like people all over Oregon and all over the country were like falling over themselves to get hemp in the ground because it was so valuable. So in that spring of 2020, that was the case. And we were conservative, and we only put 3 acres, it was 3 or 4 acres of hemp in. And we were growing certified, we were planning on doing certified, organic, all that comes later. You have to get it all third-party certified and all that, but certified organic hemp. We had originally planned to just do that because I was going to use funds from the sale of August and I's fourplex, the Mississippi Street fourplex. I was planning to use those funds to support myself and invest some money in the business to try to, start a career. I didn't get those funds, and so then we were left kind of trying to figure out what to do to pay for the things that were required on the farm, like the plants and the fertilizer and the harvest and whatever, all that stuff. And so we decided sometime in the early spring that we would do a CSA. Do you know what a CSA is?
You're talking about spring of 2020 or spring of 2021?
Spring of 2020.
Okay. My appreciation is that's when you decided you were going to grow hemp. All right. So you actually didn't put any plants in the ground until the middle of 2020.
It was May or June. I can't remember.
Okay.
We put hemp in the ground. I really would have to look. I don't remember. It was May or June of 2020.
Okay. So you planted 3 acres or so.
I think it was 3 acres. But
Right.
I started to say we were planning on just doing hemp, and we ended up having to do a CSA in order to kind of fund the whole operation.
And I'm just interested in your appreciation of what that is. Tell me how that worked. What is?
So we partnered with the Organic Growers Club at OSU, at Oregon State University, And we collaboratively produced, I think it was 50 CSA boxes, meaning we sold, if you know how CSA works, it's that you sell shares ahead of time. And so you get, it's community supported agriculture is what it stands for. So the community kind of invests in the crop with you, and then you give them whatever you get. And so they kind of get a really good deal on food, but they also share in some of the risk, because sometimes, you know, like there's a storm or something. And so that's what we did.
Okay.
And we grew food, crops, and hemp, which was more than twice as much work, for sure. It was a lot of work, because we had a lot of different crops that we were taking care of, and watering schedules and planting schedules and weeding schedules. And instead of just dealing with like one crop, we were dealing with multiple crops. But they were all food crops,
So
except for the hemp.
We're talking about a period of what, 4 or 5 years you were involved in the company?
In Soul Cycle?
Oh, no, we've been less than that. Soul Cycle. So when was the last time that you were actively involved in anything to do with Soul Cycle Farms
I mean,
LLC?
anything to do?
Well, you've got a full-time job right
Yeah,
now
so
with the River Council,
Yes,
and you've been there for about a year.
yes.
And so up until the time you took that full-time position, were you full-time doing whatever needed to be done for Soul Cycle?
I was full-time for 2 summers for sure, and you know, less than full-time intermittently otherwise. And by summers, you know, growing season, which is longer than just summer.
All right. How many people worked for Soul Cycle Farms LLC?
Jason and I, and that first summer, there was COVID, and we needed some help, and my kids were very shut off from the world, and so we had some of their friends come out and help. We paid their friends to help us on the farm. My kids' friends.
All right, so
Just as labor. Like
Ian, Isabel, who
And
else?
Chris, Lo, is L, I think it's, I don't know if it's just LOW, I think. Jay, Lily, Kate, which is with a C. Jason's sons helped, Davis and Bradford, Davis and Curtis. It was just kind of a family operation, basically.
All right, so are these young people that you're engaging in the business, are they W-2 or are they getting a 1099?
I'd have to ask Jason. They got paid officially. I mean, they got paid.
They got a paycheck.
I believe so. And then we also did, you know, some of them, it was a mixture of, some of them may have volunteered, honestly. And then at the end for harvest, we had to, we had contract labor. I mean, it was, I was working like a lot, and Jason was working a lot, but it was also contract labor because the hemp has to be harvested in a very short period of time, or it will get like a fungal growth that ruins the crop. And so we had contract labor, and then we had contractors to dry it as well. So we had other entities involved for some parts of it.
All right. So the administration of things, how is the company run?
You asking who wrote the checks?
Let me break it down to simple tasks. So when it came to going out in the field and putting your hands in the dirt and weeding or fertilizing or planting or harvesting, whatever, is it correct that you and Jason and then the young people that you'd named and also the contract labor would have all been involved in that phase?
I mean, I would say Jason was in charge. He had a history of, I was new to farming, so he was, we collaborated on a plan for the week and, whatever. We would sort of talk through things, but.
Did he get his hands dirty?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Every day, yeah.
All right. So
yeah, but
some
so
people
he was,
don't. I just want to know who got their hands in the
yeah,
ground.
we all did.
Okay.
Most of this was Jason. Jason and I did the bulk of everything. I'm giving you a list of all the people who were ever helped, but he and I were full time, and everybody else was occasional.
You guys have checking accounts?
Are you asking if Jason has a checking account?
No, Soul Cycle Farms LLC.
Yes.
It's a juridical person.
Yes.
You and I are
Yes.
natural people.
Okay,
Under
yes.
the law, it's a person just like we are.
Right.
I'm only asking about the person that is Soul Cycle Farms
Yes,
LLC right
it
now.
it has a checking account.
Okay. Just one or more?
I believe it's just one, but it may be, I've provided these documents as far as I know, and it might have like a savings and a checking, the way it's all on the same statement, I believe.
All right. Did you all have credit cards that you use for business purchases?
We had a debit card tied to that bank account.
Was there one or more than one debit card?
I believe Jason and I each had a debit card.
Who maintained the records, the financial records for the company? And by that I mean whether you used QuickBooks or some type of payroll agency, there had to be some kind of an accounting program to keep track of things.
Jason used, I think Quicken, but I couldn't tell you.
So whether it's Quicken or QuickBooks, I think they're all into it. So is that a program that was purchased solely to run Soul Cycle Farms LLC, or is that something he already had possession of?
I believe he bought a copy, I don't know. I believe he bought a copy or added a version or something for the business specifically.
You need more water?
I do need more water, and I'm a little bit dizzy as well.
Do you need to pause for a minute?
I'm a little dizzy. I think I need to go get an apple or something.
Okay, we
What
can
time
pause
is
for a
it?
minute, that's fine.
This is the end of media unit number 2. We are off the record, 10:56 a.m.